The Velthari delegation stared at Commander Elena Vance like she was already dead. She stood in the wreckage of what had been the used Prometheus, her uniform torn, blood crusted along her temple, and nothing but twisted metal and cooling bodies behind her. The negotiation chamber, neutral ground in the Kelos station, smelled of ozone and diplomatic failure. "Your ship is destroyed," Ambassador Thesson said, his crystalline features shifting through colors that Elena had learned to read as contempt. "Your crew is dead. Your fleet has abandoned this sector. You have nothing left, Commander." Elena's hand throbbed where a piece of shrapnel had torn through her palm. 17 hours ago, she'd had a ship, a crew of 243 souls, and a mission. Now she had a pressure suit with 6 hours of oxygen and a corridor full of Velthari soldiers who'd watched the Keth raiders tear her people apart. "I have my word," she said. "Is that enough?" The silence that followed stretched into something almost physical. Behind Thesson, a smaller Velthari, barely reaching Elena's shoulder, with facets that hadn't yet hardened into adult opacity, made a sound like wind chimes in distress. "Commander Taish." Thesson's tone dropped into something approaching genuine confusion. "You can't be serious. The Keth will return. They will finish what they started. And you offer words? I offer a promise." Elena kept her voice steady despite the tremor in her legs. "The Prometheus died protecting your convoy. 3 of those cargo ships made it to the jump point because my people held the line. I'm offering to keep holding it. With what? Whatever you give me." The small Velthari stepped forward, and Thesson's arm shot out to block them. "Kyren, no. She means it." The young one, Kyren, spoke with a voice like struck crystal, higher and clearer than the others. "Ambassador, I can feel it. She actually means it." Thesson's colors cycled through something Elena didn't recognize. "You are too young to understand what you're sensing. I'm old enough to know what truth sounds like." Elena watched the exchange with the detached interest of someone who'd passed exhaustion into something calmer. The Velthari were empaths, she remembered from her briefings. Not telepaths, they couldn't read thoughts, but they could feel emotional resonance. The young ones were supposedly more sensitive before their facets fully crystallized. "My crew died for your people," Elena said. "I have no intention of letting that be meaningless, and if we refuse your word?" Thesson asked. "Then I'll find a weapon in this wreckage and I'll hold that corridor until the Keth come back. Alone. It won't be pretty, and it won't be long, but it'll buy you maybe an hour, maybe 2. She met his gaze without flinching. "Or you can give me something to work with and I'll buy you days." Kyren pulled free of Thesson's restraining arm and stepped closer to Elena. This near, she could see the swirling colors beneath their crystalline skin, deep blues and violets with threads of something golden that she'd never seen in the others. "You lost everything," Kyren said quietly. "Why do you still want to fight?" Elena considered the question, considered the honest answer. "Because fighting is what I have left. Because if I stop, I have to think about the faces of 243 people I couldn't save. Because..." She trailed off, searching for words. "Because my word is the only thing the Keth can't take from me." Kyren turned to Thesson. "I'll stay with her, absolutely not. Ambassador, the Keth will return in approximately 16 hours. Our ships cannot fight, we are merchants, not warriors. Our convoy cannot run, the jump drives are still recharging." Kyren's voice carried an authority that seemed at odds with their small stature. "We have one human soldier who is willing to die for us. The least we can do is give her someone to die for. You are a resonance reader. Your value to our people is nothing if our people are dead." Kyren folded their arms in a gesture that was startlingly human. "She needs a bond anchor. Someone whose survival matters to her. You saw what humans do when they have someone to protect. The battle recordings from the Prometheus showed." "I know what they showed." Thesson's colors shifted to something dark and troubled. "I watched a human captain ram his own burning vessel into a Keth dreadnought so that cargo ships he'd never met could escape." "Captain Morrison," Elena said softly. "He was a good man, he was insane, he was human." Elena shrugged. "Sometimes that's the same thing." Thesson studied her for a long moment. Then he turned to Kyren with an expression that might have been resignation. "If you bond with her, it cannot be undone. You understand this, I understand. She may not survive. You will feel her death as your own." "I know. And if she fails, if her word proves hollow, you will feel that too. The shame of it will echo through your facets for the rest of your life." Kyren looked at Elena. Really looked with those swirling crystalline eyes that seemed to see something beyond the blood and exhaustion and battered armor. She won't fail, they said. Her word is made of the same material as her bones. I can feel it. Elena wasn't sure what to say to that. In her experience, words were easy and bones broke. But she'd learned enough about the Velthari to know that what Kyren was offering wasn't a simple vote of confidence. What exactly is a bond anchor, she asked. Thesson answered, his voice heavy. Among our people, a reader can form a connection with another being. The bond allows them to sense each other's emotional state, to find each other across distances, to know when the other is in danger. He paused. It is not done lightly. And it is never done with outsiders. So why? Because Kyren is young and idealistic, and apparently suicidal, Thesson said flatly. And because they are right. Humans fight differently when they have something precious to protect. We have all seen the recordings. Your Captain Morrison, your Sergeant Chen at Valdres, your medic who walked into a collapsing station to save 6 children. His colors shifted to something almost admiring despite his words. Your species is insane, but your insanity has a pattern. Give a human something to protect, and they become more. Elena looked at Kyren. The young Velthari stood with quiet dignity, their colors cycling through shades of determination and fear and something else. Hope, maybe, or faith. You'd tie yourself to a dead woman walking, Elena said. For what? To make me fight harder? To give you a reason to live afterward, Kyren said simply. You're already willing to die, Commander. That's not the problem. The problem is that you've forgotten how to want to survive. The words hit harder than any weapon. Elena felt them land somewhere deep, in the hollow space where her crew used to live. I don't need a babysitter, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. No, you need a witness. Kyren stepped closer. Someone to remember what you do here. Someone to carry your story if you fall, and to walk beside you if you don't. I don't even know you. Then we'll have 16 hours to fix that. Kyren held out one crystalline hand, and the light that filtered through their palm painted colors on Elena's skin. My name is Kyren Veththassin. I am 112 cycles old, which in your years is approximately 19. I have never bonded with anyone. I have never seen combat. I am terrified of dying, and I am even more terrified of watching you die. They paused. But I believe your word means something. And I would rather die beside someone whose word has weight than live knowing I walked away from it. Elena stared at that outstretched hand. In 16 hours, the Keth would return. They'd bring more ships than before, more soldiers, more death. She had a damaged station, maybe a handful of functional weapons, and whatever the Velthari convoy could scavenge from the Prometheus wreckage. And now she had this, a young alien empath who wanted to tie their life to hers for reasons she didn't fully understand. If I take your hand, she said slowly, what happens? I'll feel what you feel. Not thoughts, emotions. Pain, fear, determination, hope. And you'll feel echoes of mine. Kyren's voice softened. It won't make you stronger, Commander. But it might make you less alone. Less alone. Elena had been alone since the Prometheus died. Since she'd ordered the evacuation and stayed behind to hold the line. Since she'd watched the escape pods launch and known that most of them wouldn't make it. She'd been alone in the wreckage, surrounded by bodies she'd commanded and couldn't save. She was so tired of being alone. All right, she said, and took Kyren's hand. The sensation was like stepping into warm water after years in the cold. Not overwhelming, just present. He felt Kyren's fear, trembling and real, but beneath it something steadier. Faith. The absolute conviction that Elena would find a way. You really believe in me, she said, surprised. I believe in what you are, Kyren answered. What humans are when you have someone to protect. Elena looked at their joined hands, her scarred and bloodied fingers wrapped around Kyren's crystalline ones. Then I guess I'd better not let you down. Behind them, Thesson made a sound that might have been a sigh or a prayer. The bond is formed. May the stars witness it. He turned to the other Velthari, his voice hardening with command. You heard the reader. We have 16 hours. Start salvaging everything useful from the human wreckage. If Commander Vance says she can hold this station, then we're going to give her every tool we can find. Elena felt Kyren's surprise through the bond, and beneath it, a fierce bloom of pride. Come on, she said, not releasing Kyren's hand. Let me show you what we're working with. They walked together into the ruined corridors of Kella Station, and for the first time in 17 hours, Elena felt something other than grief. It felt suspiciously like hope. The next 6 hours were a blur of salvage and strategy. Elena moved through the wreckage of the Prometheus like a ghost returning to her own grave. Every corridor held memories. Here was where Lieutenant Torres had told terrible jokes during night watch. There was the dent in the wall from when Ensign Park had tried to fix the graph plating and launched himself into the ceiling. This scorch mark was from the weapon that had killed her chief engineer. She didn't let herself stop. Couldn't afford to. Kyren followed at her shoulder, silent but present. Through the bond, Elena felt their discomfort. The smell of human death was apparently overwhelming to Velthari's senses, but they didn't complain. They simply stayed. "This is the armory," Elena said, forcing open a buckled door with her shoulder. "Or what's left of it." Inside, most of the weapons had been destroyed in the attack. But she found 3 functioning pulse rifles, 2 cases of ammunition, and, buried under a collapsed shelf, a portable railgun that had been Torres's personal project. "He called it the problem solver," Elena said, running her hand over the weapon's casing. "Said it could punch through Keth armor at 200 meters. Did it work? We never got to test it." She lifted the railgun, checking its power cell. "Guess we will now." Kyren helped her carry the weapons back to the central hub where the Velthari engineers were working. The merchants weren't soldiers, but they were surprisingly practical. They'd already stripped the Prometheus's sensor array and were integrating it into the station's systems. "Commander, one of the older Velthari, the Sin's aide, if Elena remembered correctly, approached with a datapad. "We've mapped the station's defensive potential. There are 17 points where we could establish barriers, but we only have material for perhaps 6. Elena took the datapad and studied the layout. "Here, here, and here," she said, pointing. "Forget the others. Keth will come through the main docking ring. They're not subtle enough for anything else. We funnel them through these choke points, make them pay for every meter. And if they breach the barriers, then we fall back to secondary positions and make them pay again." She looked up. "Your people, can any of them fight?" "We are merchants, Commander. Scholars, artisans." The aide's colors dimmed. "We read emotions, not tactical manuals. Then keep them away from the fighting. I need them alive to run the sensors and maintain the systems." Elena handed back the datapad. "And I need runners. People who can move between positions carrying ammunition and supplies." "I can do that," Kyren said. "No, doubt-eyed." The word came out sharper than Elena intended. "You stay with me." Through the bond she felt Kyren's flash of frustration. "Commander, I'm not going to be useful standing behind you. At least let me. You're my bond anchor, remember?" Elena kept her voice steady. "That means you stay where I can protect you." "That's the whole point." Kyren's colors shifted to something stubborn. "The point is to make you fight harder. Not to turn me into a liability. You're not—" Elena stopped, aware that the other Velthari were watching. She lowered her voice. "We'll talk about this later. We'll talk about it now." Kyren stepped closer, and despite their smaller size, there was nothing submissive in their posture. "I can feel what you're feeling, Commander. You're already treating me like a burden to be protected, not a partner to work with. You're 19 years old and you've never seen combat. And you're exhausted, injured, and running on nothing but stubbornness. We all have our limitations." Kyren's voice softened. "Let me help. Not by fighting, I know I can't do that. But I can move through the station faster than your Velthari runners. I can sense when the Keth are close before your sensors detect them. And I can feel when you're about to make a decision based on desperation rather than strategy." Elena wanted to argue. Every instinct she had screamed against putting this young being in danger. But Kyren was right. She could feel it through the bond, the truth of their words resonating against her resistance. "You follow my orders," she said finally. "No arguments, no hesitation. If I tell you to run, you run. If I tell you to hide, you hide. And if you tell me to leave you behind—" Elena was silent. "That's what I thought." Kyren's colors shifted to something almost gentle. "We're in this together, Commander. That's what the bond means." "Elena," she said. "What? If we're going to die together, you might as well call me Elena." Through the bond she felt Kyren's surprise, and then a warm pulse of something that might have been gratitude. "Elena," they repeated, trying out the name. "I like that. It sounds like ringing bells." Despite everything, Elena almost smiled. "Nobody's ever told me that before. Velthari have better hearing than humans." They worked through the next hours side by side. Elena showed Kyren how to read the tactical displays, how to estimate ammunition consumption, how to recognize the sound of different weapons. In return, Kyren taught her the basics of emotional resonance, how to interpret the colors that shifted beneath their skin, how to use the bond to communicate without words. When I feel this, Kyren said, projecting a sensation through their connection, it means danger. I've sensed hostile intent, and this? Elena projected back. The feeling of calm focus she used before combat. That means you're about to do something brave and stupid, Kyren said dryly. I'm already familiar with it. The Velthari engineers completed the barrier installations with 2 hours to spare. Elena inspected each one personally, adjusting firing angles and checking sightlines. The problem solver she mounted at the primary choke point, aimed directly at the main docking corridor. You know how to use this? She asked the Velthari merchant she'd assigned to the position. He, or at least Elena assumed the deeper-colored Velthari used male pronouns, looked at the railgun with obvious trepidation. The targeting system seems straightforward, point and trigger. The recoil will knock you down if you're not braced. Plant your back against this wall, lock your joints, and don't fire more than 3 times in a row or the capacitor will overheat. She patted the weapon, and don't miss. We only have 60 shots. I'll try not to. He paused. Commander, may I ask you something? Go ahead. Why are you doing this? You owe us nothing. Your own people are gone. Elena considered the question. It was the same thing Kyren had asked in different words, but somehow it hit differently coming from this practical merchant who'd never held a weapon before today. Because I gave my word, she said. And because... She trailed off, searching for honesty. Because I need to believe that what my crew died for meant something. If I walk away now, if I let the Keth finish what they started, then Morrison and Torres and all the rest died for nothing. I can't live with that. Even if holding this station kills you too. Especially then. She met his eyes. Dying is easy. Living with failure is hard. I've seen officers who survived while their crews didn't. Most of them never recover. They walk around with this hollow place inside them where their people used to be. He shook her head. I'm not going to become that. Not if I can help it. The merchant was quiet for a moment. Among our people, he said slowly, there is a concept called Vethan. It means the weight of promises. The idea that every oath we make adds to our spirit, makes us more substantial. And every oath we break removes something. He studied her with new respect. You humans don't have such a concept, but you seem to live it anyway. We call it honor, Elena said. Or duty. Or sometimes just stubbornness. Whatever you call it, the merchant said. I'm glad you have it, Commander. Elena returned to the central hub to find Kyren deep in conversation with Thesson. The ambassador's colors were troubled, shifting through patterns that Elena had learned to associate with conflict. Is there a problem? She asked. Thesson turned to her, and she was struck by how much he'd changed since their first meeting. The contempt was gone, replaced by something more complex. Our long-range sensors have detected the Keth fleet, he said. They're approaching faster than anticipated. We have perhaps 3 hours before they arrive, not 4. Elena felt her stomach tighten, but she kept her voice steady. Then, we use the time we have. What else? There's another ship with them. Not Keth. Thesson paused. It's broadcasting a coalition identification signal. Coalition? Elena frowned. That's impossible. The nearest coalition vessel is 3 days away, yes. But this signal is authentic. Thesson pulled up the sensor data. It's the U's Defiant. Captain Morrison's sister ship. Elena stared at the data. The Defiant. She knew that ship. Knew its captain, a hard-faced woman named Rodriguez who'd been Morrison's rival and friend for 20 years. They can't be here, she said. The jump coordinates are apparently not as secret as you believed. Thesson's colors shifted to something almost amused. It seems your Captain Morrison sent a message before he died. A burst transmission, compressed and hidden in the Prometheus's final sensor pulse. The Defiant picked it up and plotted an intercept course. They're coming to help. They're coming. Whether they can reach us before the Keth. Thesson shook his head. The mathematics are not favorable. Through the bond, Elena felt Kyren's careful hope, and beneath it, their determination to keep that hope realistic. How unfavorable, she asked. The Keth will reach this station approximately 40 minutes before the Defiant can arrive. Thesson met her eyes. If you can hold them for 40 minutes, Commander, rescue may be possible. 40 minutes. Against a Keth assault force. With 6 defensive positions, a handful of improvised weapons, and a crew of merchants who'd never fought a battle in their lives. Elena thought of Morrison ramming his burning ship into the enemy to buy time for strangers. Thought of Torres and Park and all the others dying at their posts so that 3 cargo ships could escape. 40 minutes. Her people had bought 3 hours. "We can do 40 minutes, she said. Kyren stepped closer, and Elena felt their quiet support through the bond, not trying to change her emotions, just acknowledging them. "Then let's make sure we're ready," Kyren said. The Keth came like a wave of darkness. Elena watched them on the sensor display. 15 ships, 3 times what had attacked the Prometheus, and felt something cold settle into her bones. This wasn't a raiding party. This was extermination. "They're deploying boarding craft," one of the Velthari engineers reported, his voice trembling. 8, 12, 20 pods. "Commander, there are hundreds of them." "Stay calm." Elena kept her own voice steady through sheer will. "They still have to get through our choke points. Numbers don't matter if they can't bring them to bear." She felt Kyren's fear through the bond, sharp and real. But beneath it something else, trust. Absolute confidence that Elena would find a way. That trust was terrifying in its own way. "All positions, this is Vance." She spoke into the comm system they'd rigged from Prometheus wreckage. "Keth are inbound. You know your roles. Remember what I told you. Short bursts, controlled fire, fall back when I give the order. No heroes." "Commander," came a voice from position 3. "What if we run out of ammunition? Then you throw rocks. Then you throw chairs. Then you throw yourself at them if you have to. But you do not stop fighting until I say so." She paused. "And I'm not going to say so." The first boarding pods hit the station's hull with impacts that shook the deck plates. Elena grabbed Kyren's arm, steadying them, and pointed toward the sensor station. "Watch the displays. Tell me if they try to flank us through the maintenance corridors." "I don't need displays." Kyren's facets were pulsing with strange colors. "I can feel them." So much rage, Elena. "They're not even individuals. It's like one giant organism of hate." "That's the Keth." Elena checked her rifle. "They're bioengineered soldiers. Hive-linked. The individuals don't matter, only the collective objective." "How do you fight something like that?" "The same way you fight anything. You make it too expensive to continue." She looked at Kyren. "Stay close. Move when I move. And if you sense anything that I should know, tell me immediately." The first Keth came through the main docking corridor exactly where Elena had predicted. They were terrible things, vaguely humanoid but wrong in every detail, their bodies covered in chitinous armor, their faces a mass of sensory organs and razor-sharp mandibles. The problem solver spoke first. The merchant at position 1 fired exactly as Elena had taught him, and the first 3 Keth simply ceased to exist, their bodies vaporizing under the railgun's fury. For about 30 seconds, Elena almost believed they could do this. Then the Keth adapted. They stopped coming through the corridor in neat lines. They spread out, using the walls and ceiling, their clawed limbs gripping any surface. They moved with a coordination that no human force could match, each individual a cell in a larger predatory organism. Position 2, covering fire now. The Velthari at position 2, the aide whose name Elena had never learned, opened up with a pulse rifle. His aim was terrible, but the volume of fire forced the Keth to slow, to seek cover. "Kyren, what am I missing?" "Left side. There's a maintenance hatch, they're cutting through it." Elena spun, bringing her rifle up, just as the hatch exploded inward. 2 Keth surged through, and she fired on instinct, catching the first in what passed for its head. The second reached her before she could re-aim. The impact drove her backward into Kyren. She felt the young Velthari's terror through the bond as the Keth's mandibles descended toward her face. Her knife was in her hand before she consciously decided to draw it, and she drove the blade up through the creature's throat. Hot blood, or whatever the Keth used for blood, sprayed across her face. The creature died with a wet gurgle, and Elena shoved its body aside. "Move." She grabbed Kyren and pulled them back toward the secondary position. Behind her, she heard the problem solver fire again, and then a terrible silence. "Position 1 is down," someone called over the comm. "They're through the first barrier. All positions, fall back to secondary line. Go now." The retreat was chaotic, but not panicked. The Velthari merchants moved with a speed that surprised Elena, their crystalline bodies flowing through the corridors like water. She covered their withdrawal, firing in controlled bursts, trying to buy time. Kyren ran beside her, and through the bond she felt them doing something strange, extending their senses outward, trying to map the Keth movements. "There's a pattern," Kyren gasped. "They're not just attacking, they're trying to encircle us. The main force is a distraction. Where's the real threat? Engineering. They're going for the station's power core." Elena's blood ran cold. If Keth reached engineering, they could blow the reactor. Everyone on the station would die, not in combat, but in atomic fire. "Thesson, where are you?" "Secondary command," the ambassador's voice came back. "We're monitoring. Get everyone away from engineering. Seal the section if you have to. There are still people. They're dead already if the Keth reach that core." "Seal it, Thesson. Now." She felt Kyren's distress at her words, the casual acceptance of sacrifice. But there was no time for gentleness. She turned to the young Velthari, gripping their shoulders. "I have to go to engineering." "Alone?" "No." "Kyren, no." Their colors were cycling through patterns she'd never seen, and through the bond she felt their absolute refusal. "I said we're in this together." "I meant it." "You'll die." "Then at least I'll know why." Kyren's voice was steady despite their fear. "And you'll fight harder if you have someone to protect." "Isn't that what this whole bond is about?" Elena wanted to argue, wanted to order them to stay behind. But she looked into those swirling crystalline eyes and saw something she recognized. The same stubbornness she saw in her own mirror. "Stay behind me," she said. "And if I fall, run. Run and don't look back." "I'll consider it," Kyren said, which they both knew was a lie. They moved through the station's maintenance tunnels, following Kyren's emotional sense of the Keth. Creatures were everywhere now, filling the corridors like water filling a sinking ship. But Kyren guided them through gaps in the assault, finding moments of stillness between waves of violence. "Here," Kyren whispered, pointing to a junction. 4 of them. And they're different. They're not like the others. They feel larger, more present. Elena peered around the corner. The Keth in the corridor were indeed different. Bigger, their armor thicker, their movements more deliberate. Officers, maybe. Or specialized demolition units. "They're carrying charges," she breathed. "Explosives. They're going to blow the reactor manually. Can you stop them?" Elena counted her remaining ammunition. 7 shots. 4 targets, each covered in heavy armor. Bad odds under any circumstances, and these weren't any circumstances. But then Kyren's hand touched hers, and through the bond she felt something unexpected. Not hope exactly, something older and stranger. The weight of a promise kept, a word that meant something, a bond that transcended survival. "I have my word," she'd said. "Is that enough?" It had to be. Elena stepped around the corner and fired. First Keth went down clean, a lucky shot through the gap in its neck armor. The second turned to face her and she put 2 rounds into its sensor cluster, blinding it. The third and fourth charged, moving with terrible speed, and she knew she wasn't going to be fast enough. Then Kyren screamed. The sound was like nothing Elena had ever heard, a pure note of crystalline resonance that seemed to vibrate through reality itself. The 2 charging Keths stumbled, their coordination shattered, their hive link disrupted by frequencies they couldn't process. Elena didn't waste the moment. She fired twice more, dropping the 3rd Keth, and then her rifle clicked empty. The 4th was on her in an instant, its claws reaching for her throat. She went low, ducking under its grasp, and drove her knife up into its chest. The blade scraped against chitinous armor, failing to penetrate. Its mandibles closed around her shoulder, and she screamed as serrated edges bit into flesh. Through the bond she felt Kyren's agony mirror her own, felt them stumble, collapse, the shared pain overwhelming. No, she thought. Not like this. Not when we're so close. She reached deep inside herself, past the pain and fear and exhaustion, and found something that had been dormant since the Prometheus died. The same thing that Morrison had found when he rammed his ship into the enemy. The same thing that Chen had found at Valdris, that the nameless medic had found in the collapsing station. The human capacity for absolute refusal. She grabbed the Keth's mandibles with her bare hands and pulled them apart. The creature shrieked, an alien sound of shock and pain. And Elena twisted, wrenching its head at an angle that nothing was designed to bend. Chitin cracked. Something vital gave way. The Keth collapsed, its clawed legs still twitching. Elena stood in the corridor, surrounded by dead monsters, her shoulder a ruin of torn flesh and shattered bone. The explosive charges lay scattered on the deck, their timers disabled by the deaths of their carriers. Elena. Kyren crawled toward her, their crystalline facets cracked and dull. Elena, I can feel. I know. She slumped against the wall. But the reactor's safe. Your people are safe. You're dying. Maybe. She managed something that was almost a smile. But I kept my word. Through the bond she felt Kyren's grief. Raw and devastating, and nothing like the distant pain of losing colleagues or commanding officers. This was personal. This was real. Don't leave me, Kyren whispered. You said we were in this together. I said you should run if I fell, and I said I'd consider it. Kyren pressed their crystalline hand against her shoulder, and Elena felt a strange warmth seeping through the pain. I'm still considering. The world went gray and soft around the edges. Elena woke to the sound of human voices. This was confusing, because humans were all dead. Her humans anyway, and she was fairly certain she should be dead too. But the voices continued, speaking in clipped military phrases, and she became aware that she was lying on something soft, instead of a cold metal deck. Commander Vance? Can you hear me? She opened her eyes. A woman in coalition uniform was leaning over her, and behind that woman stood Thessin, and behind Thessin, Kyren. The young Velthari pushed forward, their facets still cracked but pulsing with relieved colors. You're alive. I wasn't sure, the bond was so faint, but you're alive. The Defiant arrived, Thessin said, 23 minutes after your engagement in engineering. The Keth were retreating when they reached us. Your defense cost them more than they could afford. Retreating? Elena struggled to sit up, wincing at the fire in her shoulder. They had us outnumbered. They lost their demolition team, the coalition officer. Elena could see Captain's bars now, said. Their command elements. Whatever you did down there, it threw their hive link into chaos. They couldn't coordinate the assault. She paused. I'm Captain Rodriguez. The Defiant. I got your captain's message. Morrison's message. Elena closed her eyes. He always did like dramatic gestures. He died the way he would have wanted. Fighting for something. Rodriguez's voice was gruff but not unkind. As near as I can tell, so did you. I'm not dead. No. You're not. Rodriguez glanced at Kyren, her expression unreadable. Your Velthari friend stabilized you. Some kind of resonance healing, the ambassador says. Not standard procedure, but apparently bonds have benefits. Elena looked at Kyren, who shifted with something that might have been embarrassment. You saved me. You were dying, Kyren said simply. I couldn't let that happen. The bond, you felt everything I felt in that fight. The pain, the fear. Yes, and you still saved me, because I felt everything you felt. Kyren's colors shifted to something deep and warm. I felt why you were fighting, not for survival. You'd made peace with dying hours ago. You were fighting because you promised to protect us. Because your word was the only thing you had left, and you refused to let it break. They paused. I've never felt anything like that before. The weight of it. The truth of it. Your species calls it honor, but that doesn't capture it. It's more like you made yourself into your own promise. Every part of you aligned toward keeping it. Elena didn't know what to say. The words felt too big for the space between them. Ambassador Thessin wants to talk to you, Rodriguez said, when you're ready. Something about establishing formal diplomatic relations between the Coalition and Velthari Collective. Apparently your defense of this station has changed some opinions. I was just doing my job. Your job ended when your ship exploded, Rodriguez said flatly. What you did after that was something else entirely. He nodded once and left, giving them privacy. Thessin approached the bed, his colors muted and thoughtful. Commander Vance. Elena, then. He was quiet for a moment. I owe you an apology. When you offered your word, I believed it was desperation. The bargaining of a dying woman trying to find meaning in her death. I was wrong. You weren't entirely wrong, Elena admitted. I was looking for meaning, but you found something else instead. Thessin glanced at Kyren. You found a bond that even I didn't believe was possible. A reader has never linked with a human before. We didn't think it could work. Your species is so loud, so emotionally chaotic. We assumed the bond would be one-sided at best, overwhelming at worst. What happened instead? Elena asked, genuinely curious. Something unprecedented. Thessen's colors flickered with wonder. Bond is mutual. Full reciprocity. Kyren can feel you as clearly as they would feel another Velthari. And you... He stopped. You're feeling Kyren's emotions right now, aren't you? Elena realized that she was. The warmth she'd attributed to relief or medication was actually Kyren's contentment, flowing through the bond like sunlight through a window. Their fear had faded to a manageable background hum, and in its place was something steadier: connection, purpose, hope. I feel them, she said softly. This changes things, Thessen said. For our peoples, for our relations with humanity. You've proven that humans can form bonds as deep and true as any Velthari. That your word has... What did Merchant Kell call it? Beth on. Wait. I was just trying to survive, Elena said. No. Kyren moved to sit beside her on the bed. You were trying to make your crew's deaths mean something. You were trying to be worthy of the sacrifice they made. That's not survival, that's transcendence. Elena looked at the young Velthari. Her bond anchor, her witness, her companion through fire and darkness. 19 years old and braver than anyone she'd ever commanded. What happens now? She asked. The coalition will want to debrief you, Thessen said. There will be diplomatic functions, commendations, all the ceremonies that follow acts of heroism. But after that... He hesitated. Kyren's bond to you is permanent. Where you go, they will want to follow. This is unusual for us. Is it a problem? It's a gift. Thessen's colors shifted to something approaching warmth. One we didn't expect to receive. A bridge between our peoples that no treaty could build. He bowed slightly. Take care of our reader, Commander. They chose well when they chose you. He left, and Elena found herself alone with Kyren. The bond hummed between them, two streams of emotion flowing both ways, creating something new from their mingling. You really want to follow me? Elena asked. I'm a soldier. My life is war and death and hard choices. There's nothing gentle about it. I know. Kyren's hand found hers. I felt everything you felt in that corridor, remember? The fear, the pain, the determination. I know exactly what you are. They paused. You're a person who keeps her word even when it costs everything. You're a protector who fights hardest when she has someone to protect. You're a leader who values duty above survival, but chooses life when given the chance. I'm a mess, Elena said honestly. My crew is dead. My ship is gone. I've got a shoulder that'll never work right again and nightmares that haven't even started yet. Then I'll help you carry the weight. Kyren squeezed her hand. That's what companions do. Elena thought about arguing. Thought about explaining all the reasons why this was a bad idea. The danger, the cultural complications, the sheer impracticality of an alien empath following a combat officer into war. But then she felt Kyren's certainty through the bond. Not naive optimism, but something harder and more real. The knowledge that connections forged in fire outlast those formed in comfort. The understanding that what they built in 16 hours of desperation was stronger than what most beings built in lifetimes. The ship was destroyed, Elena said finally. My crew is dead. I have nothing left except my word, and one young Velthari who believed in me when no one else did. Kyren's colors brightened. Is that enough? Elena smiled. A real smile, the first one since the Prometheus died. Yeah, she said. I think it is. Through the bond she felt Kyren's joy bloom like sunrise. And in that moment, surrounded by the wreckage of everything she'd lost, Elena found something she'd never expected. A beginning,